If you're just getting started with New Testament Greek, chances are you have a million things to worry about and a ton more that you're confused by. Vocab lists, paradigms, the list goes on and on. But in this episode, I want to look at one thing and hopefully make one less thing you got to worry about, and that's how to make sense of your Greek New Testament. So we're going to unpack an example from Nestle Aland 28 to try and see what's going on not only in the words on the page, but the apparatus down below. As you can probably see from the cathedral behind me, I'm not at home. In fact, I'm in Manchester, and I spent the afternoon working with some manuscripts at the John Rylands Library. And what they have there are some amazing things, regardless of what field you study. But for New Testament studies, they've got some of the oldest, if not one of the oldest, New Testament papyri around from the 2nd, 3rd century, some lines of the Gospel of Mark. So when you open your Greek New Testament, you're not opening up papyri, you're opening up a modern book. So where do all those words come from? What manuscripts are behind that text? Any Greek New Testament today, Nestle Aland 28, or again, UBS 4.5, those are all what are called eclectic editions. And what that means is that the words you're reading are a synthesis of hundreds of different fragments, codices, manuscripts that have been brought together in one place and then synthesized into a text that likely represents the earliest or best forms of the Greek New Testament. Now, that means that you're not looking at one single manuscript, but a variety of manuscripts. And they don't always agree. So this is where things get interesting. If you're learning Greek as a language to try and read scripture more, great. But what you might not realize, you're also getting a tool to understand the textual history of scripture down in the bottom of that page in the apparatus. Well, let's look at just one example of a difference in those manuscripts and where we see it at the top of the page and then down in the footnotes. So if you have your Greek New Testament, flip open to Mark 1, verse 41. Because what we'll see there is we're in the middle of a story where a leper reaches out and touches Jesus, and the reaction we find Jesus giving is different between some manuscript traditions. Up in the top of the page, what you're going to see is the Greek verb splagnistes. It means something like he showed passion or he showed pity on this man. But you'll also notice that on top or nearby that verb, there's a little symbol, and there's symbols throughout this Greek New Testament. Anytime you see a symbol that's not like a breathing mark or an accent, it's a clue that there's something going on in the manuscripts the editors want you to know about, and they're sending you down to the bottom of the page. Now, when you get to the bottom of the page, what you're looking for is that verse 41, as well as that symbol that you found upstairs in the body of the text. That's going to be how you're linking the top to the bottom of this resource. When you get there, what you'll find is there's in fact a list of information. Every time there's a vertical line, what it's doing is it's breaking up textual variants, because there are differences in this verse beyond what you are just seeing with this one verb. There are in fact several differences. So what you want to do is find your word, your symbol, and see what the variation is. Now, down below, when we match up the symbols, what we see is in fact a different Greek verb, not splagnistes, but orgistes. And what that means is something like he became irritated or he grew angry. So which one is it? Is it that Jesus showed passion or he became indignant? So now that you're at the bottom of the page, you found your Greek word, now what you need to do is decode the information that comes after it. There's a ton of manuscripts behind this Greek version of the New Testament, and in that footnotes, they're trying to distill down as much information as possible for you in as small of a space as they can. So what you're going to need to do here is not only pay attention to the information at the footnote of the page, but also in the front of your Greek New Testament, because there you'll find a list of abbreviations that relate to different manuscripts, papyri, codices. Some editions of the New Testament even have a handy little leaflet, like a manual that you can carry on with you, so you don't have to keep flipping back and forth. In our variant, what we see is that Greek word, orgistes, is followed by a capital D. And when we look up that code in the front or in that little manual, what we see is that's referring to Codex Bezae, which is a very important Greek New Testament manuscript. That's the main place we find this other reading that perhaps Jesus became indignant. But we're not done yet, because after that you see a number of other references to smaller manuscripts, those smaller characters. If you look those up again in the front or in your little manual, you'll find those all relate to other Latin traditions now, not Greek, that have that same reading now only in Latin. So which one is it? Was Jesus angry? Did he show pity? Well, I think most of the witnesses probably fall on the side of that he showed pity, but what we're getting is a minority report of the important variety and debate we have among some of these manuscripts. So when you're learning your New Testament Greek, don't stall only on the vocabulary. Don't worry about only the translation. Keep moving ahead, because what you're gonna get connected into is that longer, richer conversation about differences between manuscripts and that textual history that's the long story behind modern scripture. Well, I hope that crash course in how to decode your Greek New Testament saves you some tears and some energy as you're learning a million other things as you're taking a Greek class. Stick with it, it's so worth it, not just for the language or the ability to interpret and translate text, but how you're now connecting into that much larger history and heritage of other scholars and scribes and communities that came before you and copied and transmitted what we call the Greek New Testament.